It always begins the same way. Whispers in a boardroom, a keynote speech on a brightly lit stage, a tech blog headline that feels more like prophecy than journalism. The future, they say, belongs to artificial intelligence. The words don't just echo, they bloom. They bloom into slide decks, into budgets, into consulting contracts. They bloom into fear, into FOMO, into a corporate urgency to be on the cutting edge, even if nobody quite knows what that edge really is. It becomes gospel. If your business isn't using AI, you're already behind. You're irrelevant. And so the arms race begins. Machine learning, neural nets, predictive analytics. Each phrase carries the weight of inevitability, as if decline itself can be algorithmically avoided. But behind the buzzwords, behind the smoke and mirrors of marketing and investor calls, something quieter stirs. Confusion, misalignment, ROI reports that never seem to materialize, projects that run for 18 months before being quietly shelved, pilot programs that stay pilots forever. The promised revolution remains just over the horizon. It's not that AI can't do impressive things. It's that the hype machine rarely matches the actual capabilities. Media headlines trumpet breakthroughs with little context, repackaging academic research papers into sci-fi press releases. AI writes symphonies, one claims. AI discovers cancer, says another. And yet, in the back offices of countless firms, these systems are struggling to classify invoices or sort emails reliably. The problem isn't the technology, it's the mythology. We've been here before. Big data once held the throne. An entire generation of executives was sold on the dream that if you just collected enough information, the answers would reveal themselves. Build massive lakes of data, the consultants said. Store everything, analyze everything, track every click, every motion, every breath. The sheer volume would somehow summon insight. But insight never comes from volume alone. Many of those projects now sit dormant, vast servers filled with petabytes of unusable or outdated information. The data wasn't structured. The people trained to interpret it didn't exist. The questions it could answer were never really asked. And now, quietly, those big data lakes evaporate under the quiet sun of forgotten budgets. Now AI inherits the throne, and with it, the same cycle. A new emperor with the same invisible clothes. You can almost hear the metaphors taking shape. The new electricity, they say. But electricity doesn't hallucinate. It doesn't need fine-tuning after each shock. And unlike AI, you don't have to worry that your toaster might generate a biased output. What businesses often don't realize is that AI isn't a switch, it's a gamble. It requires clean data, problem-specific architecture, constant maintenance, and a deeply aligned team of engineers, designers, and ethicists. But buzzwords don't require alignment. They only need belief. So belief becomes the product. Investment becomes a symbol of innovation, not a function of evidence. Entire strategies are rebranded as AI first because the term makes the quarterly report sound futuristic. Boards approve spending because not doing so seems like negligence. It's better to fail chasing AI than to risk looking old-fashioned. Perception becomes performance, and the cycle repeats. In meeting rooms around the world, people nod as machine learning is suggested as a solution to problems that don't require it. Departments are restructured. Vendors pitch proprietary AI models that are often just spreadsheets with branding. The language itself begins to lose meaning. At some point, the tech isn't selling itself anymore. What's being sold is the illusion of progress. But illusions can be expensive. What's the ROI of AI? That's a question no one wants to answer honestly. Because in many industries, the answer is somewhere between negligible and non-existent. The ROI isn't monetary, it's reputational. A company using AI looks modern, regardless of whether it works. And so it spreads, not because of what it achieves, but because of what it signals. AI, big data, blockchain, metaverse, Web3, these are not technologies anymore. They are fashions. They are ideologies. And like any ideology, they resist introspection. But behind closed doors, a quieter realization is forming. Executives whisper that their AI initiatives have underperformed. Data scientists leave because their roles are misunderstood. The systems built to revolutionize the business end up becoming maintenance nightmares. And quietly, companies begin to scale back. They stop bragging. They move on to the next buzzword. And still, the world outside keeps believing. You don't need to look far to see it. It's on the covers of magazines, in the closing minutes of tech podcasts, in the scrolling lower thirds of news channels desperate to sound forward-thinking. AI will replace 300 million jobs. AI outperforms doctors in cancer detection. AI writes novels, codes apps, and runs companies. The headlines sound definitive, prophetic even. But if you trace them back, most originate from small-scale research studies, speculative white papers, or marketing material wrapped in scientific dressing. And yet, they echo like gospel. Few click through to read the fine print. Fewer still read the methodology. Most don't realize that outperforming doctors may mean a slightly better F1 score on a narrow data set in a lab, not actual clinical use, where lives and complexity collide. This is how myths take shape. Because media doesn't reward nuance, it rewards impact. And few things impact harder than a well-timed story about machines eclipsing humanity. It taps into our primal cocktail of fear and awe. It feels like we're standing at the edge of something momentous. Whether it's salvation or annihilation depends on the day. But the real danger isn't the exaggeration. It's what it crowds out. Every time an article implies AGI is just around the corner, or that an AI model understands emotions, or that a chatbot can feel empathy, we move further from reality and closer to performance art. These aren't facts. They're theater. Carefully staged, expertly lit. And behind the curtain, a team of engineers scrambling to make the illusion work for one more demo. This kind of storytelling distorts not only public understanding, but institutional behavior. Schools rewrite curricula based on what they think AI will do. Governments draft legislation chasing shadows. Venture capital shifts away from long-term science into short-term spectacle. Funding follows the flashy, not the foundational. And slowly, we build a future based not on what's real, but what we wished was real. The most damaging thing about AI hype is how it creates false confidence. It promises easy fixes to hard problems. Want to improve education? Just add AI. Need to reduce crime? Plug in an algorithm. Want to optimize supply chains, detect fraud, or make investment decisions? AI can handle it. But what gets lost is the fine print. The human labor needed to curate data, the trial and error engineering, the ethical trade-offs, the blind spots baked into models trained on imperfect history. It's not that these tools can't help. It's that they require discipline to help well. And discipline rarely makes the headlines. Consider how often you hear about AI hallucinations, language models confidently inventing facts, citing fake papers, or fabricating data. These aren't minor bugs. They're structural issues. Yet they're often waved away with charming metaphors. It's like a dreamer, people say. It's creative. But that creativity becomes a liability the moment we forget it's not grounded in reality. And yet, the headlines keep coming. One model writes rap lyrics. Another paints like Van Gogh. Another detects sarcasm. We're constantly told the line between human and machine is vanishing. But the closer you look, the more that line reappears, jagged, uneven, impossible to ignore. These systems don't understand what they generate. They don't know what a joke is, or a metaphor, or a lie. They simulate patterns we recognize, not because they grasp them, but because they've seen them before. It's pattern prediction masquerading as insight. But in a world hungry for miracles, masquerade sells. The real tragedy is what this means for trust. When AI inevitably fails, when its predictions fall short, when its biases are exposed, when it becomes obvious that the emperor has no clothes, people won't blame the media or the marketers. They'll blame the technology itself. And in doing so, they'll overlook the quieter, more valuable truths it still holds. AI isn't magic, but it's not useless either. It can sift through oceans of data faster than any human. It can find subtle correlations, automate repetitive tasks, and open new frontiers in science and logistics, but only when used with care, with context, and with humility. Without those things, it becomes just another buzzword in a long line of buzzwords, more style than substance. And that's the paradox. In our rush to believe in AI's power, we rob it of its actual potential. Because when you treat a tool like a god, you stop treating it like a tool. In the polished glass towers of global commerce, the conversation has shifted. Executives don't ask if they should implement AI anymore. They ask how fast. How fast can we automate? How fast can we predict churn? How fast can we replace the analysts, the clerks, the copywriters? AI isn't just a tool in these rooms. It's an expectation, a symbol of forward motion. Something you adopt not because it works, but because everyone else is. And in that subtle shift, something dangerous takes root. The technology becomes secondary to the signal. To appear cutting edge is more valuable than actually being effective. Companies rebrand themselves as AI-driven, with the same casual bravado once reserved for eco-friendly or cloud-based. Nobody wants to be left behind in the innovation race, even if no one knows where the finish line is, or if it even exists. Consultants thrive in this haze. They arrive in bespoke suits and confident language, armed with slide decks full of hockey stick graphs and speculative market trends. Their business is transformation, and transformation now means AI. They promise to unlock hidden insights, streamline workflows, and harness the power of machine intelligence. But behind the gloss, the specifics are vague. The pilot programs are scoped, but the outcomes are rarely defined. Metrics get fuzzy, accountability diffuses, and yet the budgets keep growing. Some businesses pour millions into AI projects without fully understanding the difference between a chatbot and a generative model, between machine learning and statistics. They hire teams of data scientists to build models without clean data, clear objectives, or a feedback loop. They subscribe to AI-as-a-service platforms with little idea what's happening under the hood. Everything is proprietary, black box, state-of-the-art. But proprietary doesn't mean effective. Black box doesn't mean valuable. State-of-the-art doesn't mean necessary. Often, these systems underdeliver. A predictive algorithm misclassifies key customers. A computer vision model struggles with edge cases. A language model begins hallucinating results that require costly human review. By the time the initiative is quietly mothballed, the consultants have already moved on to the next client. And the illusion endures. Venture capital plays a parallel role. Investors chase AI startups with a frenzy that recalls the early internet gold rush. Business plans are swapped for promises of scale. Founders speak of platforms and ecosystems, but rarely of product-market fit. There's no time. You must be early to make it big. You must ride the wave before it crests. FOMO becomes the business model. This leads to what you might call pitch deck AI, systems that are built less for function, more for funding. A prototype with a few hard-coded behaviors gets filmed for a demo. The illusion of intelligence is staged carefully. Prompts are curated, data is massaged, human help is hidden behind the curtain. Investors dazzled by the spectacle sign checks. The media bites. Another headline is born. And still, few ask the fundamental question: does it work in the real world? Some of these startups vanish in months. Others get acquired for talent, not technology. And occasionally, one survives long enough to pivot into something more mundane. Help desk automation, fraud detection, CRM enhancements. Not bad products, but far from the AI revolution they promised. And yet the narrative of disruption marches on. The mythology is too profitable to abandon. Entire vendor ecosystems emerge around it. Tools, APIs, middleware, plug-and-play solutions. Everyone selling shovels for a gold rush no one's verified. The result is a strange form of collective make-believe. Buyers pretending they understand what they're buying. Sellers pretending they know what they're selling. The losses are rarely discussed. Failures are reframed as learnings. Executives blame implementation, not strategy. Shareholders are distracted by other metrics. And in the vacuum of honest assessment, the illusion survives another quarter. But not without cost. Every misaligned investment deepens cynicism. Every AI-powered product that underdelivers erodes trust. Teams grow weary of being retrained for systems that change quarterly. Customers grow suspicious of features that don't improve their experience. And the truly useful applications of AI, those quiet, unsexy tools that actually work, get buried beneath the noise. Because usefulness doesn't sell headlines. Hype does. And so we drift further from the truth. That AI, like any powerful tool, requires alignment. It requires boundaries, stewardship, thoughtful design. It isn't a plug-and-play miracle. It's a discipline. One that demands domain expertise, ethical oversight, and long-term commitment. Without those things, it becomes just another expensive distraction, an ornate mask over a deeply human face. There's something ancient in the way we talk about AI. It's not just data and models, it's prophecy. A dream older than silicon. In every generation, humans have peered into mirrors, myths, and machines, asking the same question. What if something other than us could think? We're drawn to it, not just intellectually, but emotionally. The idea that consciousness might emerge from circuits feels both thrilling and terrifying. It forces us to re-examine what makes us us. And in that re-examination, we project our deepest fears and fantasies. This is why AI hype sticks so easily. Because it doesn't just sell technology, it sells a story. A story where machines become mirrors. Where intelligence is distilled into clean equations. Where bias is eliminated, inefficiency conquered, mortality rewritten in code. AI promises us control over complexity. It offers clarity where once there was chaos. It plays into the modern mythology of progress, that every problem can be engineered away, that every flaw can be debugged. But underneath the story is something more vulnerable, our desire to be rescued, from overwork, from confusion, from failure. AI is pitched as the answer to 1,000 frustrations. Don't understand your customers? AI will predict them. Struggling with healthcare logistics? AI will optimize them. Drowning in bureaucracy, inequality, dysfunction? AI will fix it. It's a seductive story. But like all seductions, it glosses over the truth. Because the real problems aren't technical. They're human, structural, political, ethical. You don't solve inequality with better code. You don't erase systemic bias by training a model on biased history. You don't improve healthcare by predicting outcomes while hospitals remain underfunded. And you don't strengthen democracy by automating decisions behind opaque algorithms. Yet this is what the AI narrative has become: a talisman, an abstraction so powerful that it begins to replace the thing it was meant to serve. Nowhere is this clearer than in education and policy. Governments, often driven more by optics than outcomes, rush to adopt AI initiatives without the expertise to evaluate them. School boards implement AI tutors to solve underperformance, even though human teachers are underpaid, undersupported, and overstretched. AI ethics committees are formed, but stacked with industry insiders. Policy is shaped not by sober analysis, but by TED Talks and tech panels. And so, the belief spreads downward. Students are told they must learn prompt engineering, that their future job prospects depend on understanding machine learning frameworks. Teachers, lacking training, are asked to incorporate AI tools into lessons with little guidance. Meanwhile, entire fields of humanities, philosophy, and ethics are quietly deprioritized. The machines will handle that, they're told. We need STEM now. But what gets lost in that shift is the very thing AI can't replicate: judgment, ethical reasoning, contextual awareness, emotional literacy, systems thinking, the soft skills that aren't soft at all. And so we begin raising a generation not to collaborate with technology, but to defer to it. The same pattern repeats in public discourse. An algorithm makes a decision about parole, about credit scores, about social media content, and it's treated as objective, neutral, as if removing the human hand also removed the human flaw. But the flaw persists. It's just harder to see now, disguised in the language of probability and precision. And because the system is so complex, most people stop questioning it. This is how culture changes, not in a single moment, but in a gradual retreat from responsibility. We stop asking who benefits. We stop asking why. We become consumers of decisions we didn't shape, guided by machines we don't understand, implemented by institutions we no longer trust. AI doesn't just change how things work. It changes how people think. It shifts the burden of proof, the locus of blame, the expectation of oversight. And all of it feels inevitable. But it isn't. These narratives are constructed. These policies are choices. The cultural deference to machines is learned, not natural. We can choose differently, but only if we pause the story long enough to see it for what it is. A story. A compelling one, yes. But a story nonetheless. Not prophecy, not destiny, just a series of decisions. Some made blindly, some made with hope, some made by people who stand to gain from belief itself. So the next time someone says, AI will solve this, it's worth asking, who gets to define solve? Who built the system? Who trained it? Who profits if we stop asking questions? Because in the end, it's not the intelligence of the machine that shapes our future. It's the intentions of the people who build it, and the culture that lets them build without scrutiny. If the story continues as it is, if the pace of hype outstrips the pace of truth, then the destination becomes easy to imagine. A world where automation is pursued not for better outcomes, but for the optics of innovation. Where systems silently make decisions no one understands, and no one is held accountable when things go wrong. Where people are quietly displaced by technologies that overpromise and underdeliver, and the feedback loop of failure is buried beneath spin. A world of performative progress. Imagine this future. Governments locked into multi-billion-dollar AI contracts that produce dashboards no one uses. Hospitals forced to interface with machine-driven triage systems that fail at nuance. Classrooms where students are assessed by opaque pattern-matching models trained on outdated norms. Workplaces where employees are managed by algorithms that optimize metrics, but slowly hollow out morale. In that world, human judgment becomes a liability. Creativity is flattened. The logic of the machine replaces the logic of context. And as the failures compound, biased arrests, misallocated resources, disinformation campaigns that manipulate public thought, the trust we once placed in technology becomes brittle. But by then, it's too late. We've built our systems on sand. And the worst part, not that it happened, but that it could have been avoided. Because there's another way. We could have treated AI as a tool, not a revolution, a practice, not a prophecy, something iterative, narrow, transparent. We could have built systems around collaboration rather than replacement. AI that extends human intuition instead of trying to replace it. Interfaces that explain their reasoning instead of hiding it. Models that are open, auditable, and accountable. We could have said, this tool is powerful, but only in partnership. We could have trained leaders not to chase buzzwords, but to ask harder questions. What is the actual problem we're solving? Who benefits? What happens if it fails? Where does the data come from? What happens to the people we displace? We could have emphasized literacy over luxury, helping workers, students, and citizens understand what AI can and cannot do. Taught not just the code, but the consequences. Built regulation not out of fear, but from clarity. A framework that supports innovation and scrutiny. One that asks for proof before investment. One that demands alignment before scale. In that world, a company doesn't brag that it uses AI. It explains how. It shares its model assumptions. It opens itself to audit. Investors don't fund demos. They fund reproducibility. Schools don't rush to adopt. They pilot, iterate, and involve teachers in the loop. Public policy isn't written in response to hype. It's shaped by people who understand the technology and its social impact. In that world, the media stops treating AI like magic. Headlines speak of trade-offs, not miracles. Context, not spectacle. And perhaps most importantly, we begin to rebuild trust, not in the machine, but in ourselves. Because at the center of every hype cycle is a human hope. A hope that things can be better. That machines might free us from the tedium, the error, the chaos of our systems. That maybe, just maybe, we can finally outsource our flaws. But the truth is, we can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Technology reflects us, our priorities, our assumptions, our incentives. If we don't change those, then no machine, no matter how sophisticated, can save us from ourselves. And so, we're left with a choice. Keep walking the path of illusion, letting buzzwords guide our future. Or step off the stage, clear the fog, and start again. Not with promises, but with principles. The story of AI isn't over. But maybe now, we finally start writing it for real.